Yo, what is going on YouTube? I am Germ here. One of the biggest stories throughout this LCS season, and really throughout the entire League of Legends esports season, has definitely been the Cloud9 LS situation and scenario, where obviously they brought him in. Cloud9 YouTube viewership explodes. Viewership on Twitch for their LCS games explodes. All their content, all their social media, everything is exploding. Then after just a couple of weeks, LS is fired. That's an even bigger story. You know, the whole thing has just gone really, really crazy. There's been a ton of rumors, a ton of speculation. There's been people speaking out about the whole situation, like Fudge, like Max Waldo has talked about it a little bit. We've gotten all these different things, and it seems like everyone has a million different opinions and everything about it. But today we have a big update to this whole situation that we are going to be talking about. One that I think is actually interesting on both sides. Whether you are a fan or a critic of LS, there will be a little something for you in this one. So let's just get right into it, because it's probably going to be a little bit longer of a video, because there's actually a couple different points that I want to talk about. But this comes from, I don't know if this is one of the newest episodes of Summoning Insight. This was streamed a couple days ago. It was uploaded on YouTube 2 days ago. Is the new Cloud9 destined for Worlds T1 streak? And Summoning Insight, Season 5? Episode 18, featuring Sven. Obviously, Sven is a guy who was not in C9 or C9 Academy, but he was on the C9 Scrim team last split. So, he got to be behind the scenes for the whole Cloud9 LS thing. He's a guy, and Monte Cristo talked about this, who was probably stayed with Cloud9 because of the whole LS thing, because it meant he was going to actually get to Scrim consistently with the main LCS team, help keep his level up and all that stuff. And yeah, obviously, he's a guy who's very, very outspoken, and a guy who does a lot of content and a lot of interviews. And now that he's actually back in the LCS, he's back in the spotlight more. He's going to be talking more. And in this video or this podcast or interview or whatever, he actually gives us some interesting information about the LS stuff. So let's see what Sven has to say.
So, speaking of like you scrimming against Berserker, how was it operating with because one of the reasons I think you came back was the opportunity to actively scrim against the LCS team, right? You agreed to the situation that you were going to be in at the start of this year, because there was a big push from Cloud9 at the beginning to really set you guys up as like hard scrim partners. Did they really do that, and was it successful in your mind?
Yeah, when Els was there, at first we were scrimming 2 days a week against the LCS team, and the scrims had like purpose. We would play the same draft 3 games in a row until the LCS team won, or like we'll play certain champions that they want us to play.
And I think that's definitely interesting to note, and I think that's actually something that I really agree with, and something that I think is cool. Having an academy or a scrim team or whatever, especially one at as high of a level that the C9, academy and scrim teams were, using them to be able to practice against certain comps, certain strategies, certain drafts, certain picks, and you're not worried about if you're taking away from the practice of your scrim team or whatever, because they're just there to help the whole team get better and all that. I think that's actually really, really cool, and I think that can help improve LCS teams and players very, very quickly, and I know that's something when I talked with Dr. Respawn about, he's a really big proponent of that as well, potentially being maybe like the future of esports in general is, some of that more focused practice. Like if, you're from a traditional sport like basketball, soccer, whatever, you have your main team, then you have your scrim team, you have your backups, your B team, whatever, and they are told to do certain things to give different looks and different strategies for your main team. You don't have 2 teams scrimming against each other, kind of with competing interests and stuff. That's not the most ideal. It's not the most optimal practice. So I think this was actually a good thing that LS did with Cloud9 for sure. And I think it would be better for more teams to try to adopt something like this, but it is difficult to implement, I think, at this point in League of Legends esports, at least, because most of the time you'd have a team that isn't even good enough to give relevant practice experience often enough.
So yeah, at first they had a purpose and they were kind of useful, I think. But there's always this one thing where LCS teams that are really good, for example, don't want to scrim a lower tier academy because it's a waste of time at the moment. But if you invest in that academy team, they will eventually become the best academy team, and maybe even a top tier LCS team, but like top 5, 6, 7, whatever, right?
Yeah, it's not that hard to be a top 6
at that point, yeah, sure, yeah. And at that point, they're the best scrim partner you can have, because you can hide things. And with LS, that was really useful, because he would make them play things like Soraka mid, or the Gwen Ivern mid jungle thing, right? And many more things like that. So when Ivern mid jungle pops up in your LCS scrims, there's two outcomes. Either the other team immediately starts playing it if it's good, and then someone else is in scrims and they're like, that's kind of fishy. That's probably from that team with LS, right? And then you on stage, it's banned. So
Yep.
it can be
We were
valuable to
talking
hide.
about this earlier, like the scrim, how scrim meta.
And, using this scrim team to hide picks was definitely something that C9 and LS were able to do, even in just the couple of weeks he was with them. Now, one argument on the other side, I think, is how relevant would this have been throughout the whole year? Would LS and C9 every single game, every single week, been able to consistently pull out these crazy, crazy picks that were always going to shock and surprise people? Were teams going to catch on to them? I don't know. It's always this back and forth. You pull out some crazy picks, teams try to adjust, you try to adjust, and it goes back and forth. Since we only got to see 2 weeks of C9 and LS together, we got to see, LS's crazy picks and some of the interesting drafts and stuff, and it worked out well. But how would other teams or other drafts or other picks adjusted? And then, would they have been able to have even another level to continue adjusting? 2 weeks was just not a big enough sample size to really learn too much about it, I don't think, even though it was a really, really fun and exciting time.
As develop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you get stumped by Iron mid jungle, you're like, this was kind of OP, so I'll play it.
Even if the team doesn't use it, the team you scrimmed against is talking to their mid laners like.
Just wanted to skip ahead a little bit on this part.
His buddy
kind of Monte Cristo
talking to his buddies over on T1 or whatever.
We're here for Sven.
It won't take long before the news get out one way or another.
Yeah.
So
yeah, agreed.
I think the Academy also scrims were useful. There were some troubles, like Blaber didn't like that he was playing against Karthus and Evelyn and Udyr every game. Hecarim, when the meta was like Lee Sin, Sin Sao, Jarvan, I think was the spring split meta for the most part. So in his mind, he gets worse practice. But from my point of view, we actually won a lot of games in Academy against LCS, so maybe the champions weren't so bad.
So I think that's a very, very interesting point, but it also shows that Blaber, behind the scenes, maybe wasn't super happy with everything that was going on, during the LS era of C9. And now this would be multiple players at this point. We have had Berserker come out and say that he didn't love that he was having to practice so many different champions, especially champions that he didn't think was very good. We know Summit has had his fair share of issues with LS and the whole kind of style. We've heard Fudge come out and say that there was definitely issues and problems going on behind the scenes, and it probably wasn't worth, sticking it out. And now we're also hearing that, hey, Blaber maybe wasn't totally thrilled with the whole situation ever. And I think it's interesting that Sven's like, hey, the Academy team is winning some games, so maybe these picks are actually good, so maybe it's not a bad thing. And yeah, that's fine. That's one argument. Maybe that's an argument for the fact that Blaber should be playing some of these champions. But still, if Blaber knows, hey, this weekend, there's a 0% chance that I'm going to be playing against Evelyn. There's a 0% chance that I'm going to be playing against Karthus or Udyr or whatever when, they have a 0 or essentially 0% pick rate in the LCS. What good does practicing against those champions do for me? Even if I think they're good, even if I know they're good, even if my coach thinks they're good or knows they're good or whatever, if essentially no teams in the world or in the LCS or whatever are playing them, why am I going to practice against them? And what good is that doing? Is that really the best, use of our time or whatever? The theoretical best thing, and learning how to beat that is awesome. Maybe that'll help you somewhere later on down the road, but 2 weeks into the LCS season, if we know the other team's picking Xin Zhao this weekend, maybe I want to have a strategy ready to go to beat Xin Zhao, not, hey, let's use our scrim time so LS can prove that Evelyn is really, really good right now. That seems to me like something more that was maybe feeding LS's ego, or just, trying to win a scrim game really, really hard or prove a point, rather than, hey, how can we get ready for this weekend? Again, if you did think that Evelyn or Karthus or whatever was really good, then let Blaber play them and show him how good they can be, not beat him with them, and show him, hey, here's how we're going to beat this thing. That doesn't make too much sense to me. I could definitely understand why Blaber, could have been frustrated by that whole situation. But again, did think it was interesting. Now, this is like, so many members of the C9 team that even though LS did some good things, he absolutely did. And Sven says it here. He's done some good things. I'm sure Blaber, likes some of the stuff that LS did. We know Max did. We know definitely that Fudge did and stuff. But they've all said, hey, there was also some negative sides as well. And I just think that's something that a lot of the LS fans and LS himself maybe have not been able to get a full grasp of. If this many people in the organization were having a problem with what you're doing, maybe there was a problem going on. Now, I did want to skip a little bit ahead here to 226.55, where we have a little bit more about what was going on. And then we have one more clip after that as well that will, really kind of cement some things as far as, the C9 LS era from another player's perspective, which I think is pretty interesting.
It'll be ahead and it's over. Like, if that really ever happens.
There was this common thing Ellis would say. He would ask the players after a scrim game, how much gold do you think this team needs to be ahead to win this game against this comp? And they'll be like, 5k gold, 10K gold, blah blah, and it will often be his reason. So you think that they have to be had 5K gold at this time to win the game? And they're like, yes. So why the fuck are you fighting Herald? He would be like, and they're like, that makes sense, But
And I think that's actually a very, very interesting point, and probably a good point, and a really interesting way for LS to be making some of his cases. And maybe some people don't respond to that super well, but at least from my perspective, someone who's played sports throughout their whole life, that's like a really, really traditional American sports coach tactic of conversations that go on every single day at football practice or basketball practice or soccer practice or whatever. So I don't think that's a bad thing or anything like that. I actually think that's a good thing, and I think that is an interesting way to get your players to think a little bit more, and it shows that he was willing to challenge them on ideas. Even some of the best players in the world, challenging them on their game knowledge and their game fundamentals, which I think is definitely something that most head coaches in the LCS do not do, if maybe any head coach in the LCS do. And maybe that's not their job. Maybe that's more the job of a strategical coach or an analyst or something like that. Maybe head coaches should be more of managerial and managing personalities and all that stuff. I don't know, but either way, it is kind of interesting, and also kind of funny that he was saying, why are we fighting over Herald if we know the other team needs to be up 5,000 gold to beat us, or 6,000 or 7,000 gold, whatever? You're not going to get 5,000 gold off of Herald, so what do we care if they get a 1,000 or 1,500 or 2,000, power play off the Herald or whatever? Kind of funny, kind of interesting, and it just shows that, yes, LS was doing some good things, did have some good ideas.
Summit was.
I like the way he baited him into that as well. He did like the classic stuff.
Yeah.
Whoa, it's like he's like, oh, why would you do that, you idiot? Like, oh,
it's like a children's teaching kind of thing, right?
I love it. He had the trap card the whole time, Yu-Gi-Oh style. Very much in the LS wheel.
Really did, yeah. And Summit was always under the impression that he wanted to play Gnar and Necton and fight Herald, fuck yeah. But then someone also agreed that if he just played something else and outscaled, they would just win. He's like, yeah, that's true.
I like the way he's doing it.
And that's kind of funny too, obviously, because that was ultimately the downfall of Summit and C9, that, Summit never gave in to that, either playing safe side, playing around timers, playing around ganks and pathing of the other team's jungler, just respecting the fact that they could be there to kill him or whatever, but also the fact that he never was really ever willing to go towards, some of those scaling picks or some of those safer picks. He was going to try and bully his lane. He was going to try and kill the other people in lane. He was going to try and fight at every Herald. He was going to do all these things, even if it meant he was going to go 0-9, even though, it's something LS had been challenging him about the whole year. And hey, when it worked, it worked. He was the LCS MVP, but when it didn't work, he was one of the worst top laners in the entire LCS. And it sounds like Sven even said, at times Summon admitted, like, yeah, hey, that actually does make some sense. But he never implemented it into his own game. And maybe it would have worked out for the better. Maybe he wouldn't have won MVP, but maybe C9 would have made a little deeper run in the playoffs. We have one more little story too about Winsome, which I thought was kind of funny.
Now on some fucking that little kid in the fucking Matrix movie, there is but Summit. I love it.
Very fun words on Sona. Instead of buying 1 or 0, he would just get mad.
Talking about buying too many
doing
pink
it,
wards.
and one day he was fucking slam table and say, "Look, you have fucking Moonstone at minute." It's the first game of the split last year.
Oh, because he'll want you to rush the moon stuff.
E9,
Of course, yeah, that build, yeah, of course.
Win some Sona. That's
yes.
maybe it's here. I can't edit, man.
No, I know he's someone who thinks you should complete the moon staff or whatever, as soon as possible.
It's right here. Yeah. It's the first game against Golden Guardians, and he has Moonstone at. Cena has 3 dragons at 20 minutes, and Soul's coming up, and he doesn't have Moonstone 1 minute before Soul spawns.
Perfect.
So, just another instance of, LS actually challenging some players on gameplay ideas and stuff, saying, hey, you don't have to buy 2 pink wards every single time you go back to base. This is something that's really been going around a lot on, Reddit, League of Legends subreddit and League of Legends Twitter and all that stuff. A very, very big topic. But also the fact that LS, he's slamming the table, he's screaming and yelling. Some players are going to take well to that. Some players aren't. Some orgs are going to take a little bit better to that. Some aren't. It just kind of depends. Every player is going to react to stuff differently. But it was funny, Sven says he's slamming the table. He's asking him why he's buying so many pink wards. How do you not have, your Moonstone done at this point or that point or right before the dragon or the soul fight or whatever? Kind of interesting. But then finally, last thing at 2:35. This is the last thing I want to cover in this video, and we will get you guys out of here. I think this is definitely worth the time, though. We get this last quote from Sven.
That was the case before, so. But as much as it sounds really good with LS and all that, there also was a lot of problems with LS and the staff and all that I came to. But it was there was a lot of drama in the org, and it's just not worth it.
So There he says it. Very, very interesting. He does say in this, throughout this whole show, and I highlighted a bunch of instances of him saying things that he really liked and he really appreciated. And he says, things that LS did that maybe he wishes other coaches did or other teams tried, or things that he, might take with him going forward into his career. But he also says at the end of the day, even though I'm making it sound so great, it wasn't worth it. He's saying, yes, there was drama. Yes, there was stuff going on in the org. Not everything he did was all sunshine and rainbows and roses. He even says, even all the good stuff he did, it was not worth it. He's not saying, hey, I wish we would have hung on to him or we should have hung on to him or whatever. And some people are going to be like, oh, yeah, that's just because he's signed to Cloud9 still or he's with the org or whatever. I don't believe any of that for a second. Sven is a straight shooter. In my opinion, he's very outspoken. He's going to speak his mind. He has no reason to hide anything at this point in his career. It's not like if he said, hey, I wish LS was still here. I think it'd be cool if he stuck around, or I like a lot of things he did. He could just put a period there. He doesn't have to go on any further. It's not like C9 is going to reprimand him or anything like that. But it is interesting. He says a lot of the good stuff that LS did, but at the end of the day, he still says it was not worth it. So this is, again, yet another member of Cloud9 coming out and telling some LS stories, but also at the end saying that, hey, maybe the org was right at the end of the day for moving on from him or firing him or whatever. Still really weird timing. Still doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But all the, Leandri's profile pictures on Twitter and all that stuff that fuck Cloud9. I'll never watch Cloud9. I'll never root for them. They did LS wrong, whatever. There's a lot of people inside the org that I think disagree with you, and maybe it's time to start accepting that fact. Even if he did have some good ideas and did do some good things. Like I said, it definitely was not perfect, at least from what we've heard from many, many, many people, players, managers, everything inside the org. But that's pretty much it for this video today, guys. If you drop a like if you did enjoy it, I would appreciate that so much. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about anything we talked about in this video today. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. Subscribe, stay up to date on all my latest content. Consider checking out the Discord. First link in the description below. Hopefully catch you guys in the next one. But until then. Peace.